Hear that? That's the sound of busy. To a restaurant, all that shouting and banging might as well be a symphony. It means the long days and longer nights are paying off. Sure, it's noisy, but there's a worse sound. This, not busy. Busy means business, which is why Toast gives restaurants the tools and tech they need to help them perform under pressure. Sounds pretty good, right? Toast, built for busy.
Well, good morning, everyone. It's time for our AM Minnesota show. We've got the fire chief, who I always fail to mention is also in charge of the fire codes as well, right, Dusty?
Yeah, we take building codes, codes in general, property maintenance, all kinds of different stuff.
Because we don't talk about that very often here, and I thought maybe we'd touch on it a bit, unless you got some other things you want to talk about.
Well, we definitely want to talk about fireworks safety, but we got time to do both. Yeah, so we can jump right into the code stuff as long as we're talking about that. That's actually next thing on my list after I leave here, to go meet with a building owner that has changed some things up, not knowing that what they changed was a fire code issue, and a fairly serious one. So I'm not going there to lower the hammer and close anything down, but we have to work. We'll work with them and figure out a way to make things work. And that's a general rule of thumb that I have when it comes to dealing with codes and people. Like there's plenty of people out there that are pretty up on the codes, and there's a lot of people that are not. So sometimes when removing a door. So if you have a certain type of a building, like an assembly, where you have people that come in, doors are not just conveniences to get into a room or get in there. They are
need a fire door.
Yeah, they're likely a fire door. They're a size for a certain amount of people. They have the swing is a certain way. So it's not as simple as just taking a door out and then changing it up or leaving it as an opening because maybe that door was needed as a fire break. It's definitely an exiting issue. So we run into a fair amount of issues with that. Like people that did something and maybe they did it a year or so ago before somebody ever questioned it, or the right person went in there and said, that doesn't seem right, and that seems like it would be against codes, maybe somebody that knows. And then it comes to us. So of course, then we're the bad guys. So this is a part of my job that isn't always so great, because plenty of times we cost people money because they have to do it by the code. They've done something and now we maybe have to undo it. That's even more expensive. What I have to remind myself, and sometimes those people that I'm dealing with, is we're doing this for the right reason. This is a safety thing. And the reason that is in code, the reason that most codes exist and most laws are we learned the hard way over years. And a door that you can't just have a hollow core door that is in between your house and your garage. Your car catches on fire or something in your garage catches on fire. That steel door, that fire door can save your home. Yeah, it's more expensive, but there's a reason for it. So there's a lot of reasons that codes exist, and again, it's mostly because we've learned the hard way that this is a very important thing. This door, this code section protects life and property. But sometimes at the time, when it takes extra time and extra money, which it lots of time does, that gets forgotten about. And we've been in some pretty heated discussions, I'll call them, about why, and so we try to, for certain issues, we try not to lower the hammer instantly. We try to work with people, but there are certain things that you just can't take the chance. I mean, some of these things can rise to the level of making the nightly news because Murphy's Law kicked in and they had a fire and somebody got hurt or worse, and the root cause could be just lack of an exiting sign, or a door lock that was an exit and wasn't supposed to be locked. Many of these things are simple things, but can be very devastating if they're not followed.
Right. How many people are in that division?
So right now, our building official has moved on. So we're using a company out of the metro area as our building official. So there's one person from that company, and then we have an inspector. We have an admin. Well, she's a permit tech, and then we have two. They kind of do it all. They're property maintenance, rental. They can do some limited building inspection stuff. I have them help me with fire inspection stuff. So I try to take on the fire stuff because they're busy enough with their stuff.
Yeah, well, with all the apartment buildings in town, my gosh.
Yeah, so there's 5 in that department, and some days it takes all 5 of them out. This hail has really put a huge workload on those guys down there.
I bet it has.
And granted, they're not overly complicated inspections a lot of time because, but there are some crazy roofs out there. They're not all, a roof isn't just a roof. And that roof across there has a lot of peaks and valleys, and there's ice and water stuff that has to go on. And then you have flat roofs, and a roofing inspection isn't just walk by, look up there and say, oh yeah, it looks good, and move on. There's way more to it than that. And that ticks some people off sometimes too. But we've also learned that if we don't do these inspections, there are lots of great contractors out there, but there are some that will cut a corner or didn't have enough of this and just got something that will work just good enough or just cover it up and move on. And it may be good for 4, 5, 6 years, but down the road, all of a sudden now you have something leaking because something wasn't done correctly. So inspections and making sure that it gets done right is very important.
Flat roofs in Minnesota have never made sense to me.
Yeah, but think of some of these buildings. What would you do? Think of like the Aldi warehouse. I mean, you can't put enough pitch on that. I mean, that's a huge, huge building. So I don't have a good answer. And there's some building that is.
But doesn't the fire hall have a flat roof?
Mm-hmm. Yep. And even think of that pitch. That's not even that big of a building, but to get enough of an angle for that water to run off, and then the structure to hold that up. It can't be of wood at that point. That's all metal. So I don't disagree with you, but there are some of these buildings where it's the lesser of two evils, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, as you said, when we sat down, you said, I won't be here before the 4th of July, so let's talk 4th of July fireworks.
Yeah, crazy, huh? It's right around the corner.
Perfect sense. I know where does the summer go.
Well, I'm happy to say that when I looked at the latest forecast, the last few years, it seems like we didn't really have, maybe had a week or two of spring, and then bam, it was summer. And we had touches of that here lately. Like it got pretty hot there for a little bit. But the next week or so is in the 70s. Now we're going to get a little gradual work into July. So I'm happy to report on that. And we're going to get some rain, but we need some rain. Stuff's growing. But yeah, the 4th of July is right around the corner. I think this week I'll do my first firework tent inspection. So those are going up likely this week and next week. And so it's going to get busy here when it comes to fireworks.
And virtually everything in Minnesota anyway is not allowed. I mean,
yes. So I did make a list off of the state's website, and it's really crazy. So the fireworks that are legal in Minnesota, there's like 6 bullet points, and it takes a whole page. And the ones that are illegal, there's like twice as many, and it only takes half a page because the ones that are legal. Here's an example of this is legal in Minnesota. Wire or wood sparklers of not more than 100 grams of mixture per item. Cone fountain. The effect is the same as that of a cylindrical fountain. When more than one cone is mounted on a base, total pyrotechnic composition may not exceed 500 grams. So it's easier to talk about what you can't have than what you can have, because what you can have, any firework that explodes, any firework that are aerial, firecrackers of any size, ladyfingers, sky rockets, bottle rockets, missile-type rockets, helicopters, aerial spinners, planes, UFOs, Roman candles, mines or shells, chasers, parachutes, aerial shells. So that's easier to say than all that other 500 grams, 100 grams. Now, it'll say that on when you buy them, but have you ever looked at that when you buy a fireworks, how much grams of anything there is? I haven't. So I know it gets controversial every year because on the 4th or the weekend of the 4th, there will be fireworks going off all over town. And to be quite honest, it's against the rules. It's against the law. You can't have them. We'll field some complaints. The PD, the dispatch center will field a ton of complaints. It's a tough one to run around and to enforce. Now, I'm not bailing out the police department, but on the whole scale of offenses that are going on, fireworks on the 4th of July are tough ones for anybody to keep up with and get them all, because they're going off all over. So PD will respond. They'll go there and tell them that they can't have those, and they won't do that. But I'm not going to speak for John, but they do get overwhelmed by these calls, and it's tough for them to give tickets to everybody that has something illegal. So they take the education approach, I believe, and tell people that they can't have that, and here's why: because they'll start fires. We've had buildings burned down and trees on fire because of these things, and that's why they're illegal. Not because we're fun wreckers, kind of are, but because we tell them they can't have these things. But again, kind of back to codes, you can't have these things because we've learned in the past that people get their fingers injured and eyes. And
you have a note on there how hot sparklers are?
I don't think it said that
I
on
see
here.
Little kids running around with sparklers.
Yep. 1,000 degrees. I remember, I think we've talked up to 1,200 degrees.
I thought that's what it was.
Yeah, and they're running around, and they're sharp, and they're strong, they're wire.
All they have to do is trip, fall down, get it poked in their eye.
And yeah, we grew up with them, and you and I are still here all in one piece.
Yeah.
But I have my senior T-shirt. I don't know if I have it anymore, but that's got a hole in it from a bottle rocket back in the day. They were okay to have. Well, somehow it ended up against my body and blew up and put a hole in my senior 1988 senior T-shirt.
Wow.
Yeah. So things can happen. I didn't get hurt. I didn't get anything from it, but things can happen, do happen, and the rules, the reason we can't have these things are because of that. Yeah,
but they can have sparklers.
They can have sparklers, but these other things that are are less controllable. So a sparkler, in a little kid's hand, maybe not the wisest, but it's a different control mechanism than when you shoot a bottle rocket off. Even if you aim it a certain way, it's not that accurate. It just kind of tails off and goes and does its thing. So
yes, you're right.
Catches the wind. And
they were legal when I was a kid.
Yep, me too. Yep. So we've learned that we can still enjoy the 4th of July and this year's 250th.
I always say leave it up to the professional, Dusty.
Well, you've seen, maybe stay up late enough to see the show that the guys put off down there at the guys and gals down at the fairgrounds, the one the gambling funds sponsor through the city. They're awesome. You're not going to get any better fireworks than that anywhere. And it's free to sit there and watch them, and you don't have any liability. You don't have to worry about getting hurt. That's a good way to enjoy them.
Yeah, that's what I always say. All right, we got to take a little break here, get our opening market report, or Jerry will have my hide. I kind of like having my hide. Currently with fair skies and 64 degrees in downtown Faribault. We're going to check out with the folks at Linder.
Good morning. It's time for the market update on this Monday here on the Linder Farm Network. Joining us, Jim Emter, Van Awning Company, Alexandria. Well, Jim, now corn futures are on the higher side, having been lower earlier in the session. Soybean futures a little lower. What are you following with these markets today?
Yeah, Linda, a lot happening here. Let's make no mistakes. As we come out of a weekend with announcements that this Friday we'll be signing trade deals, and then, may have changed already, Linda, by the time we get off this spot. But, underlying tone right now is expectations are we do have the framework of an Iran deal. The Strait should open. Signatures on Friday, we hope. And if it all comes together, that casts a little bit of a negative shadow here in the grain markets, supports the stock markets, and those are the type things that we're seeing supports the metals markets. When you couple that with this being a FMOC or FCM, basically the Fed's going to be out this week with the FMOC report, and we're going to need to watch that because the tone of that will be key here. This is Warsh's first release of that, and the net result of it could be here if they stay steady, but indicate that rates could climb. That could cast another negative shell on commodities. If they flip and say interest rate cuts are still in line, that could cast actually a little positive, around the grain. So we're kind of stuck here with 432 and 1130 being those first key support areas, Linda's, for corn and soybean. If we break from there, 389 and 1084 are the next two for D's corn and November soybeans. So again, that would be a ways lower. So very important that we try to hold up here for the grain markets.
Livestock futures feeder cattle higher today. What are you watching with cattle and hogs?
Yeah, obviously, we're up to, I believe, 12 now of the New World screwworm cases, and the market's still holding together and rallying here. So we'll see if cattle market can give us some upside momentum here. Obviously, we're right up against some key resistance areas. Last week, we talked about this market kind of wedging up, coiling the spring, tightening up. And again, if we can get good closes for both feeders and lives, we open up that upside potential. So we'll see if the cash undertones can remain. 255 to 257 live base, 404 to 408 dress. So seems like we've got the bids there. We'll see if it can carry through. Hogs, on the other hand, doing next to nothing, Linda. And again, until we get above that $100 mark, you just don't see a lot good here for the hog market, with the potential of fading down to the $89 level. That is the next price count for July hogs.
Thank you, Jim. Jim Emter, Van Auning Company, Alexandria. Chicago, July corn, 414.5, up 1 3/4. September is at 422 1/4, up 1 1/2. December at 441 3/4, up 1 1/2. Beans, July 11.12, down 1 1/2. August 11.17, down 1 3/4. November 11.29 3/4, down 2 1/4. July soybean meal up 10. July soybean oil down 124. July Chicago wheat up 1/4 cent. June live cattle up 7. August up 30. August feeder cattle up 130. July lean hogs 98.12, up 67, with October down 77. The Dow is up 584. This is a Linder Farm Network.
Compart's Boar Store would like to make swine producers aware of increased availability of genetic material through our Boar Stud network, as well as natural service boars. 2025 nursery closeout data shows an incredible 1.04% nursery mortality on 237,000 piglets through 58 pounds. If you're interested in easy starting robust pigs, call Chris Compart at 507-381-9280.
If your well is over 10 years old, it might be time to take a closer look. Minerals build up, pumps wear down, pressure tanks fail, and small issues turn into expensive ones fast. Irvin Drilling and Pump can inspect, clean, and update your system before it becomes a problem. Family owned since 1956, with locations in Olivia and Granite Falls. Call 320-523-1621 or visit irvindrilling.com.
That's our update.
AM Minnesota on the Mighty 920 KDHL.
We are back, and Dusty Dienst is with us. He's the fire chief. We're talking about fireworks safety. The bottom line probably is leave the fireworks to the professionals.
Yeah, and if you are really wondering, I think most people know this, but there's some that probably don't. If you're wondering if it's legal in Minnesota, if you can buy it in Minnesota in a tent, not in the back alley or from a buddy out of the back of his truck, but if you can buy it from a licensed dealer, I shouldn't say just in a tent, because I know Walmart in the past has a row or two of them, but they are legal. So the ones in the tents and the one in a building is the only one I know of is Walmart. Those are the legal ones, and you won't get in trouble. That doesn't mean they're not dangerous, though. Like, to your point, fireworks, there's still some fire there. We're talking grams of pyrotechnics, so we know that it gets hot. We know that they can start a fire. These are the ones that are legal are less likely to fly off or wander off or put off such a large amount of heat and flame that it could catch something easily on fire. But even the legal ones can catch on fire. But if you can buy them in a tent, they're legal to have. If you're going to Wisconsin, you know what you're doing, and
a lot of people do.
Yeah, some do. Yeah, well, it's not blind. I got to go to the Mound a couple weekends ago, which took us through Iowa into Wisconsin, and it's not by happenstance that there's lots of fireworks.
Right at the border.
Fireworks sales happening at the borders are there's a reason for that. But reality is what it is, kind of like in the codes world. People will do what they're going to do, and we as officials that have to help try to take care of these or enforce these ordinances, whether they're code or fireworks, we like to try to be reasonable, try to work with people, try to educate them first. But you can only educate people so many times. You tell the same person the same thing over and over, and they keep going against it. Sooner or later, when do you say enough's enough and have to fine them or whatever the consequences are to get them to learn the lesson? It's hard for me to say that. That's why I stammer, because it shouldn't be that difficult, because what our laws, our building codes, our fire codes, our law enforcement partners, their laws, those are to keep people safe. And many times we don't think we're doing unsafe things when we truly are, if we're going against codes. There's a reason that you have this nail pattern or this door or this amount of smoke alarms in these areas. There are reasons for the well-studied, well-researched reasons for those. And it even the electrician in me even goes to this once in a while to say, codes are bare minimums. Codes, the laws, these laws of what fireworks you can have, these are bare minimums. You can be better than what codes say. These fireworks, as we've said, the legal ones, they're legal, but that doesn't make them safe. They're safer, but they're still unsafe in the wrong person's hands. And same with our law, our codes, they're all minimums. Like, we are having you do the bare minimum that is safe and is the right thing to do. But you can do better, and plenty of people do more than what the code, I'll just throw something out there. I don't even know if it's a thing, but you need 5 nails in the end of this board. Some people put 6 or 7 because if 5's good, 6 or 7's got to be better, right? There are people out there that do things above and beyond code, but it gets frustrating for people that have to enforce codes that we are trying to enforce you to do the very bare minimum that is right by years and years of testing and people learning the hard way. It's hard to convince people that at the time. Sometimes there's people, when you start talking money and delays in timing, people get pretty heated and pretty upset. And I totally understand that. But from our side of it as code enforcement people, we are not asking the world usually, and it's the right thing to do.
Is it code now, when you build a new home, to have it sprinkled?
No. Well, I took a sprinkler plan review class, and it deals a lot with code. And here's the common answer when it comes to code questions. It depends. So there are certain size homes that have to be sprinkled. They're usually really, really large homes. There's certain square footage. I don't know what they are. We don't have a lot of them around here. So yes, there are some that have to be sprinkled.
But in your professional opinion, as a firefighter and a code enforcement guy, should all our homes be sprinkled?
Well, here's that answer. It depends. Yeah. So yes, if you want to look at one side of it, the life safety part of it, I'll go back to schools. Of course, most people don't sleep in schools. Some people do, and preschools have school. But we have lots of sprinkled schools. We have never had a death from a fire in a school in Minnesota ever. And it's because of fire drills, the buildings, and even back before sprinklers, but now they're all sprinkled. It's hard to argue with the results of what the sprinklers can do. And sprinklers are really, really important when there's lots of people and when there's people sleeping. So,
and I understand it adds cost.
Yes.
But I've always thought that when you're building new, it's going to be a lot cheaper than if you do it later, right?
Well, it's nothing's impossible when it comes to retrofitting or cutting stuff in and doing later, but it is way easier to do it at the beginning.
Right.
So the whole reality check of that is because we have so many homes out there right now that aren't sprinkled, the reality of having all homes sprinkled someday is just doesn't exist. But you do have to start somewhere. And yes, sprinklers save lives, and they typically save lives of people that are asleep. If there was a fire in this room right now, you and I would see it well before a sprinkler or an alarm because we'd see it, smell it. We don't need an alarm or a sprinkler to take care of it. But in homes in the evenings, when you're sleeping, a fire can get quite a ways along that could challenge certain people from getting out of that home. That's why smoke alarms are on your ceiling. Smoke rises. Your smoke alarm will go off when the smoke in that hallway or in your bedroom is still at the 7-8 foot level. So you maybe don't even have to crawl out at that level. That's why they're up there, and that's why they go off when they go off. But we also know that smoke alarms can fail. There's homes that don't have smoke alarms. Sprinklers have a very, very low failure rate. We hear the bad. They get some bad press in the winter when they freeze and they break and they do damage. That's due to some other failures. That's due to a lack of insulation. Something changed. That sprinkler is in the wrong spot. There's usually a root cause behind that. But sprinklers are very reliable and they do save a lot of lives. But yep, a cost of a home now. You start talking about what plumbing costs, what electrical costs, what lumber costs, and then I'll throw in sprinklers. It's going to make them even harder to afford. And so there's a lot of things that go into should we sprinkle every home or not. From the firefighting side of it, and from if my kids living in a home and they both live in homes that aren't sprinkled, I wish they were, but to do that now is really expensive, and they're just not. My home's not sprinkled. It wasn't. I wouldn't say it wasn't a possibility when I built it in 2000 or had it built, but it really wasn't even considered. I didn't consider it. I was a firefighter then too, and I didn't even consider it.
And you're a fire chief now.
And a fire chief now. But it all is in perspective. Like if I were to build a house right now, I could sit here and say, yeah, I'd have it sprinkled, but I'd also have I want good quality windows and you start adding it all up, and very few of us can just have everything that we want. So what do we take out? What do we cut back on? I mean, those are questions that anybody doing a remodel or building a home has to face those questions. If you're lucky enough to not have to have a budget, then don't cut out sprinklers for sure. But most people have a budget that they have to deal with, and sometimes sprinklers aren't. They're not a nice looking window or energy efficient. They're there in case you have a fire, and that will save your life. But let's just not have a fire and talk about prevention and education and smoke alarms to help get you out early. So there are a lot of different ways of looking at it, but sprinklers are the ultimate thing that will save.
Well, in all honesty, Dusty, not a single person ever thinks they're going to have a fire.
Nobody does. Nope. I've never went to a fire and said, yeah, I'm really sorry that happened to you. And I've never had anybody say, yeah, I was just waiting. I knew that was going to happen someday. Never heard that ever. Ever.
And most fires, wouldn't you say, are preventable?
Most fires, yeah, most is a good. There are some true accidents. There's failure of equipment, but even some failures of equipment can go back to lack of maintenance or somebody jimmy rigs something. So, yeah, there are plenty of fires that happen that we can prevent. But fires are way down, so we're doing a good job of that. But I don't think fires are ever going to go away totally.
Well, I've got, not even 30 seconds.
Well, I want everybody to have a happy 4th of July. I invite you to come down to the fairgrounds and see the awesome show that the the company that we hire puts on every year.
Yeah, let the professionals do it.
Yeah, and just if you do have fireworks, legal or illegal, be very careful with them.
Most definitely. All right, that concludes today's edition of AM Minnesota. I don't remember what we got for tomorrow, but tune in. It'll be an informative show.
Hear that? That's the sound of busy. To a restaurant, all that shouting and banging might as well be a symphony. It means the long days and longer nights are paying off. Sure, it's noisy, but there's a worse sound. This, not busy. Busy means business, which is why Toast gives restaurants the tools and tech they need to help them perform under pressure. Sounds pretty good, right? Toast, built for busy.
Hi, I'm Sherry Harris, owner of LifeSource Water. Your tap water isn't as clean as you think. Cities add chemicals like chlorine and chloramine on top of contaminants they can't handle, like microplastics. At LifeSource, we believe your water should support your family's health. Our whole house system delivers filtered water from every tap, even your bath and showers. For over 40 years, we've built systems to handle all your Bay Area water needs. Call our factory at 1-800-WATER-99 or visit lifesourcewater.com.
Warranty limitations apply.